So sticking with the Xbox ecosystem, Battletoads, we now know a release date, August 20th, right around the corner. Initial thought around this was just, I feel like we've heard very little about this game, and now it's coming out in a few weeks.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of people forget that it exists, and it doesn't help that its
Yeah.
first trailer, which was E3, I think it was probably 2 years ago at this point. I
Yeah,
don't.
that was my gut feel. It was about
Yeah.
2018, I reckon.
It wasn't a great trailer. Now I won't say. So they've got a new launch trailer that it's probably the first time I've had a good look at it since then. Because I'm not, I'm not a huge Battletoads fan, honestly, but it was much better because they showed up a lot of, I guess, what they're calling the multi-genre gameplay, which makes sense. It's Battletoads, so there's obviously the racing kind of turbo tunnel style levels, and then they've got like what looks like shoot 'em up style levels like you Gallagher and things like that. It looks really cool. It's a follow up. The last game in the franchise was 1994, which is crazy. Like essentially, Battletoads was only around for that 3 to 4 year period, and they
Yeah.
put out a whole bunch of games across different platforms, and then it just kind of went away, which is strange to me because it is beloved by a lot of people. I think it is definitely an overrated game in many regards. It looks amazing. It can there's so many things that should have hit the my buttons, so to speak, but it's just I think it's horribly designed. It not even the turbo tunnel. I'm cool with the turbo tunnel. Maybe they could have made it slightly easier, but whatever. It's the levels afterwards that are just it's just trial and error in pure form. And I remember there's one level where you're racing against like a rat down these things, and you need to know what you're doing, otherwise you just have no chance of winning. And that's
Yeah.
that's horrible design. There's elements of that in Mega Man when you're dropping through the layers and stuff, but that's very quick to learn and it's easy to repeat and get back into the game. Battletoads, if you lose there, you can essentially start back at the start of the game. And I nearly beat that game, but I had to use like rewind features and things with the rare replay to do that. And I'm just like, how would anyone ever play through this
I
normally?
like that claim. I nearly beat that game using rewind
Well, that's why I
features.
made sure to say it in the same sentence because it's not really beating it, but I wanted to at least experience the game. And then you got awesome
Yeah.
people out there like the Mexican runner, the speed runner, who's great at that
Oh, yeah,
game.
that guy.
Like
Yeah, 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 yeah.
like there's people that can do it, but they're people that obviously they're freaks of nature, basically.
Oh, yeah.
But when I watch,
Yeah, there's some seriously frame perfect stuff that you need
yeah,
to do
it's
in
crazy.
Battletoads.
But when I watched the
Like,
trailer,
frame perfect.
the other thing that really stood out to me is I don't know if you remember the Dark Queen, who's like the big bad
Yeah.
guy. Um, so she had a incredibly overly sexualized design. It was kind of ridiculous. But there were
Yeah.
elements of design like, okay, that's actually a cool design. I'm happy if they scale it back a little bit. But it's like they went completely opposite direction. It's really weird how they've chosen to redesign her.
Yeah.
It's
Like a nerd or something.
yeah, it's almost like a Steven Universe or some kind of like Nicktoons kind of thing. And it's like okay, but I think it's a bit much. Like still, it kind of loses, I guess, the essence of of what you're going to that game to relive a lot of nostalgia, and I think a decision like that is a bit questionable. But yeah, I'm willing to give this a try. Um, any bet it's going to be better designed than the original games, simply because it's probably going to be more accessible. Um, and I don't mind a hard game, but that game, the original, was ridiculous. It was just ridiculous.
Yeah, like I owned the original game on the NES, and I don't know why I owned it or I had that specific game. Maybe it was just like back in those days it was you going off very limited information, and sometimes it's just the cover or some magazine spoke about it. And it looked cool. That game, for whatever you want to rate it, like 2 out of 5, 3 out of 5, or whatever it is the most well known 2 out of 5 game that existed on the NES. Like it's not a good game. Battletoads on the NES, sorry to break it to people, it's not a good game. Like I totally agree with everything you say. It's not well designed. It's not fair in its toughness. It's not earned in its toughness. And it was a bit symptomatic of that era around, having really, really hard games. Fine. But it was to a point where it was like ridiculous. And it just wasn't really fun. But very popular franchise. And I'm really surprised they haven't revived it earlier. Because it's probably one of the few franchises that people, yeah, they know it. Like if you go, hey, there's a new Battletoads game, they actually know what that is.
Yeah,
So
I wouldn't. I'm still surprised that Rare never took a stab at it on the N64 because that kind of would have felt natural to and maybe there was something that maybe there's some hidden archive thing out there that has come out in the past that I don't know about. That hey, they were planning on doing something like that, but it's it makes to me it would have made sense. Hopefully, again, like it would have been a better game. Like you've always got to have Battletoads is always probably going to be a hard game, but I think you can approach it from a much better direction. So,
well, I think one thing about Rare and what was happening in the N64 era and the early GameCube era was Nintendo. I think they realized that they needed to stop them making their own IPs because it was becoming a risk. So they actually started to force them to change their games into Nintendo IP games.
yeah,
So, for instance, like Star Fox Adventure, that was going to be like Dino Planet or whatever it was going to be called.
Yeah.
Dinosaur Planet, yeah. So, yeah, and there's lots of instances of that for N64 as well, that they're like, no, don't make this, make it a Donkey Kong game, or make it like something like that in the Nintendo IP wheelhouse, which is smart, like, to be honest, when you're working with the second parties. But, yeah, look, like, I think this game, you give it a chance, it's going to be on Game Pass, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
It's one of those weird ones where I feel like if the gameplay is tight and fair, it actually could be an awesome game. Because the Battletoads, as an idea, it's super cool. It's just like, a totally rad version of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It's a total rip-off of that. So, like, from that perspective, it's fine. So I could see a cool game coming out of it. But yeah, the original I don't like. But it's very, very famous. Very, very famous. And I still feel like people don't think of it. Like, I almost think if you made a very faithful follow-up of that game, people would hate it because they probably don't realize how bad that game was.
Yeah, it's that game. It looked great. It had so many things in its favor, but if you just tried to play it, it was miserable.
And now I'm not sure how you'd even segue to the next topic that we
Talking about
have.
miserable. No, not really. So